Give me 1 second. Welcome all. We are live once again for another episode of the No Sky podcast, where we discuss mental health in the African American community. I have a very special guest with me today, author and writer, and I must say she's definitely a survivor. Once you hear her compelling story, you will definitely see why I say survivor. To all those who are watching the No Sky podcast, please give a warm welcome to Miss Kenyatta Abanathy. I'm sorry, Kenyatta Abanathy Lawrence. How you doing today, Miss Lawrence?
I'm good, Matthew. I'm good.
That's great. That's great. Once again, I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast. It's an honor to have you up here. I always try to give everybody flowers while they're still here. And just to give a little backstory, you hit me up in Messenger. You saw the podcast last week. You were interested in coming on the show. We made things happen. And I'm very glad and happy and that you took the time out to be on the podcast. And for those who don't know you, Miss Kenyatta, please introduce yourself and give us some background about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kenyatta. I'm born in Wisconsin, relocated to Virginia when I was 11. My dad was in the military. Attended high school and college here, Green Run in Norfolk State. I have 4 beautiful children, 4 grandchildren, and I wrote a book recently called Look at Me Now, God Kept. Which entails everything that I have gone through in my life up to a certain point. And then that's part 1 that's out on Amazon. And then part 2 will be out at the end of September, beginning of October. I also belong to a great, awesome Bible teaching church called Relevant Church under the direction of Dr. J.L. Simpson and Pastor Lady Ginger Simpson. Since joining that church, I can tell you my life has not been the same. It has truly changed me. I feel like I've done a 180 because of everything that has happened in my life. We tend to conform to things, hurt and pain and trauma, and it kind of changes us, to a sense of negative in a negative way. But, once I started going to church and, reading the word and developing my relationship with God, I tell you, things have just turned completely around, completely.
Okay. And now I grew up in church myself, so I definitely understand the church background of it. Let me ask you this question. In the book, you talk about something traumatic that really happened to you when you was a young woman. This situation happens to a lot of young Black women who don't talk about these things, or we was more so kind of taught coming up that when these things happen, especially in the family, to keep it, hush hush, and to just, pray about it and seek the Lord. But in all actuality, when we become adults, it's not that prayer isn't enough. It's not just so much that prayer isn't enough. It's just more so we have to deal with the reality of what we're living in. Tell us what happened to you when you was a child and how that changed your life, or the things that happened, should I say, when you was young.
I would say the first traumatic experience that I had was when my real mom tried to kidnap me out the front yard. Of course, I didn't know who she was because my mom was 14 when she had me. So immediately my grandmother took hold of me and adopted me. And then my mom was out of the picture. She ran away from home and was gone until the age of 4. And I was playing in the yard one day, and I remember her coming up to the gate trying to get me to come to her. And I remember running in the house, and then later that night, the police came. It was just so chaotic and it was a mess. And as a little girl experiencing that, I was truly traumatized and terrified. Here I had this woman that was my mother that I didn't even know. And I had my grandmother, who I thought was my mother, who I came to know as my mother. They're playing tug of war with me, pulling me back and forth. And, I fall to the ground and, and the police just, take her away. But my mother, because I chose to stay with my grandmother, because again, I didn't know her. I hadn't seen her, didn't know anything about her. My grandma didn't tell me anything. And, I just remember telling the police officer, I don't want to go with her. I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. I want to stay with my mom. So at that point, my mom tried to explain to me, my grandma tried to explain to me who she was and, why she was acting in that manner. But of course, I can only relate to how whatever a 4-year-old mind, I probably couldn't understand the whole dynamics of it. But, I remember just being so traumatized by that. And it just really was, it really altered me in a way. I was scary after that, kind of was scary to be by myself, kind of scary to, not to leave my mom's sight, thinking that someone was going to grab me or what have you. And then, as time went on, as I was telling you, I was molested by a cousin, an older cousin. She was 17. I was 4. Yeah, it was in the same year. I was 4. And I was using the bathroom. And of course, I couldn't wipe myself. So we were at a picnic. We were at her mother's house. It was my granddad's brother's wife's house. And I remember her coming in the bathroom because I was calling out for someone to come wipe me. And she came in and she wiped me. And then she laid me across her lap. And she said, well, let me make sure you're clean down there. But she was rubbing me in a sensual manner down there. And I remember I was laying across her lap and I was just like, this isn't right. Why is she just kept on rubbing me as if, she was getting off on it. And I asked her to stop. And she said, no, I'm not going to stop. And she was like, you can't tell anybody or else we're going to get a whooping. And of course, I was scared of getting a whooping. So I never told. Year later, my mom's friend's daughter used to come over. She was a little bit older than me. I was 5. And she used to come over and play with me. And we used to go in my room. My mom and her friend would be in another room talking, how women do. So we would be in the room and she would lock the door and she would say, let's play house. You be the wife, I'd be the husband. So again, me being the young one, I think she was like 9. She might have been like 8 or 9, but she would pull my pants down and get on top of me, and she would take her pants off and get on top of me. And I just remember like, this isn't right. What are you doing? And she would say, well, this is what husbands and wives do. This is what they do. So we have to do this, but you can't tell or else we're going to be in trouble. So
okay, so hold on. So let's back this up. So 4 years old, it was a 17-year-old cousin.
mm-hmm.
5 years old, it was a 9-year-old family friend.
Right.
Okay, so the 17-year-old should have been in prison because they know at that point she probably wasn't a virgin, so I'm sure she knew what she was doing.
Oh yeah.
Okay, 9 years old, I blame the parents because that child either had that happen to her,
mm-hmm.
and she was acting out what she saw, even though she knew it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, it was something in her household that taught her these things.
Right.
And just like we were speaking in the last podcast last week, a lot of behavior is learned and it starts inside the home.
It does.
Unfortunately, in the God knows, unfortunately, in the Black community, it always seems like when it comes to molestation, he's either inside the home by a family member or inside the church. There's so many stories of men and women who, came out about their stories as they became adults and would talk about how they went on certain church trips or how the pastor would fondle them and things like that. A lot of things. But once again, how we talked about a minute ago, how in the church, it was taboo to talk about molestation.
It was.
It definitely was frowned upon to talk about it. And unfortunately, there were a lot of Black kids who had these type of situations happen to them through a family member, a close friend of the family, or somebody of the church. Now, I don't know if we can honestly say this goes back to a slavery thing where we was molested and raped and beaten by, white people. And we're just so used to this type of trauma to now. It's like we replay what we went through from generation to generation to generation. Or could it just be pure ignorance? I have 3 daughters myself. One is 6. I have a 6-year-old, I have a 2-year-old, and I have an 11-month-old. And, they're all girls. So these type of things definitely, I have to make sure that I stay on top of, because, they're my daughters. Right. I have to protect them with my life. And, that's so unfortunate how a lot of African American girls and boys were molested and raped by family members or someone that they trusted when they were kids. And
never told.
They're never told. Fortunately, in our household growing up, my mother nor my grandmother tolerated any type of funny business. My uncles couldn't hold me a certain type of way or any of those things. And it wasn't no admission of guilt. It wasn't that my mom didn't love her brothers and stuff like that. It was just understood, a certain way. Even with my children, when we had our daughters, I'm like, no, you're not gonna sit in nobody's lap.
Right.
No grown adults going to kiss you all in your face. Because adults do adult things.
Exactly.
So why do your lips need to be on a child? You know what I'm saying? And these how these things start. These how these things start. You have parents that so, I don't know if they just so nonchalant about certain things, or they're so trustworthy. But at some point you have to have common sense. You have to, know when to separate yourself, from certain, separate your children from adult settings.
Right.
You can't have I remember growing up my mother was heavy on, if adults come around, we go to our rooms.
Right. Go out the room.
Exactly. But at the same time, my mother was a wonderful mom growing up, especially in that aspect, because no adults was wandering in our home. Like if me and my brother, my sister was in the room playing, none of her adult friends was able to come back there.
Right, wander through the house. Right.
Exactly. My mama didn't play that. You know what I'm saying? My mama kept a gun on you. She'd shoot you for real. But she didn't. You know what I mean? She didn't tolerate that type of stuff. Neither did my grandmother.
Right.
I can remember my grandmother had a daycare center growing up, and all the little kids that she would babysit. Anytime she was changing the children, something like that, I already knew to go out the room.
Right.
I knew that I couldn't hold the children. I knew that. You know what I mean? Because it's a respect thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You should never let your good be spoken evil of. Even if it's, good to play with a child and make them happy, that's cool and all, but you don't want it to look like something different from a distance, even if it's not.
It was so prevalent back then, because since writing my book, I can honestly say 3 people from my church have come to me and told me they were molested.
Yeah, and that's the reason why. And that's the reason why. It's very important to tell your truth, because you never know who you're going to impact. Because, like I said, once again, even though they're in your church, they never went to the pastor and told him that.
No.
Because there are certain things that, as human beings,
right,
if you didn't go through it, we're just not comfortable with talking to you,
right,
about it. Irregardless to your education, irregardless to your status, you're a pastor, a bishop, a deacon, a president, whatever. If you didn't go through what I went through, I don't feel comfortable, nor do I trust talking to you about it.
Right.
So that's why it's very important, especially in the Black churches. And one thing I want to really point out to those who are listening and will listen, you have a mental health ministry. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
God kept You Are Not Alone was a God-given vision. I was sitting on the couch one day and I was in the process of finishing up my book. And I talked to God a lot and I said, Lord, I want to do something else. I want to be a support to other people because, some people need that. They need to know, they need that positivity. They need to know that they're not alone in this fight. And it came to me. And at first I was scared to put it out because I said, well, what if people say, God, Cap, you are not alone. What's that? How people are so critical. And, then I said, you know what, Lord, you gave me this vision and I'm going to do it. So the day, March 10th, I put my first posting out and September 10th will be 6 months. And what I do, I'm just a support to mental health illness. I give information. I can't give any medical advice because I'm not a doctor, but I can be a support to others who may be going through things or have gone through trauma, pain, or just trying to live their lives on a daily basis, just trying to make it. Because as I was telling you earlier, this walk is not easy. It's a battle every day. And people that suffer with or have been told that they suffer with mental illness, like for me, I was diagnosed with having severe, now mind you, severe PTSD. I've never heard it called severe before, but on my paperwork, it says severe PTSD, depression, and then suicidal tendencies. I have since been delivered from suicidal tendencies. I don't think about death anymore. There was a time where I thought about death at least once or twice a month, where I thought about taking my life, that I just didn't want to live anymore. So with that being said, and there's a lot of people hurting. There are a lot of people hurting today. Since starting that ministry, people inbox me and they just want to talk. They just want someone to listen. They just want to know that someone else is going through the same things that they're going through. How did you do it? How did you come out of it? What are you doing to, get through it? So that's why I have my roundtable discussion where I bring people on now, put a pause on it, but I'm bringing it back in September, where I interview people about different things, anxiety, depression, um, suicide, different things that people go through in their lives and just how they're dealing with it now and how they came out of it. And what they're doing to combat it, to keep it under control. For me, my remedy was God and therapy.
Ain't
I
nothing. Hey, amen. Because it ain't nothing.
Yes.
Those who are listening, if you are going through something, it is nothing. It is sensible
Hmm.
for you to go talk to someone, even if it's a professional. Because I'm gonna tell you something. Most people
Mm-hmm.
can be healed through conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't always feel, and I'm talking straight to my black people right now, because we have a tendency to believe that medicine is going to cure the problem.
No, it's not.
We think that if we go get medication or even self-medication, I'm gonna go as far to say the alcohol, the drugs, I don't care if it's weed, cocaine, crack, pills, any of those things, it will not take away the pain that you have. And the pain is what's killing you.
It doesn't. There was a time in my book I talk about when I was addicted to um, Vicodin and Percocet. I would take them to sleep. I didn't want to be up. I didn't want to face the pain, all the pain, years and years and years and years of pain that I was carrying for so long. I would take it to sleep. I woke up, I would take it again to sleep. I was just sleeping. It's like I was sleeping my life away. Yes, I was functioning because I was going to work, but come the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I slept. I slept because I didn't want that memory. I didn't want to keep thinking. Now, when I'm at work, I'm at work. So my mind is focused on work. But once I came through that door Friday, it was on. Pop a Vicodin or a Percocet, and I would sleep. And then if I woke up, I would. And then what stopped me, my mom, my real mom, is a heroin addict, has been for over 32 years. Now, mind you, she has a master's degree. She was on the dean's list at ODU.
That goes to show you education is not the answer.
She got her bachelor's from ODU. She got her associate's from TCC, got her bachelor's from ODU, stayed on the dean's list, graduated with honor. She had all kind of sashes on, colored tassels. Then went to South University, moved at her master's. She was working on her PhD. She would have been this year Dr. Tanya Palacios, okay? She got back out there. She cannot leave them drugs alone. She gets clean. She does good. She cannot. And the one thing that I saw, my aunt and I found her out Ocean View. She had OD. She was on death's door. I saw that. And to this day, it still haunts me. I saw her the way she was. And immediately I stopped. I said, I don't want that to be me. I don't want that to be me. So, yeah, and I talk about that in my book in part 2, that was an eye opener for me.
You know what? I'm going to say this. Sometimes the negative visions that God allows us to see is actually the positive door that will lead us to freedom. And what I mean by that is sometimes it takes for you to see somebody in a situation that you know you can very well be in yourself to change your situation.
Of course.
Sometimes just the thought of death can scare you straight. And, like I was telling people, you can have all the accolades in the world. You can have all the education. You can be PhD, masters. You can Madam Sum Cum Laude, all that other stuff. But if your head isn't right, if you don't have a sound mind, if you don't know how to differentiate right and wrong, life and death, you're going to have a really, really hard time because the war is not of the flesh, but of strongholds of principalities. You know what I mean? And regardless if you believe in God or not, that's irrelevant.
Right.
This is a spiritual warfare.
It is.
Anytime it's dealing with the mind, it is a spiritual warfare.
We're at war with ourselves.
Exactly. But I also will tell people a lot of times accountability. You cannot allow yourself to listen, watch, or engage in certain things because it will or it can harm you. If you allow yourself to keep watching a certain type of violence, you're going to become violent. Because it's the mind. You have to mind your diet. What you feed your mind. Whatever, your mind is like a garden. Whatever seed you put in it will harvest. So the seed is what you allow yourself to hear and what you allow yourself to see. I keep it 100 with you. I don't even watch the news. For what? It's nothing good on the news. It's nothing.
It's depressing.
Yes, you'll get depressed real quick. Just
right.
And that's the way they want it to be. They want to feed you the most negative, the most vulgar, vile images and news that they can because it sells. It makes you, it puts you in a different type of mindset. And to all, if you, whatever you've gone through in life, it is okay to go talk to someone that you trust.
It is.
That's where it starts from. That's where the healing starts. To walk around angry, upset, depressed, and frustrated for things that happened 30 and 40 years ago because you haven't decided to talk about it. I've learned something. The moment you open your mouth and begin to speak, somebody going to speak to you and have the same situation going on that you never even knew. You'd be amazed at how many people went through the same thing you went through, but you'll never know it if you don't speak about it.
No doubt. No doubt.
You know, and that's unfortunate and within the Black community. We have been taught to what goes on behind closed doors stays behind closed doors.
Exactly. Just keep that mouth shut.
Even when we know it's things
Yep.
that's detrimental.
Yep. Keep that mouth shut. That's what I was taught.
You know, and and honestly, growing up, my mother, they would say that, but it was only for like things that you knew was like affected the family in the sense of, okay, mom lost her job or
Right.
something like that. You know what I'm saying? That's between us.
Mm-hmm.
But, if it was something going down in our household, molestation or something like that, oh no, we was definitely letting my mom and them know. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, unfortunate because, those things didn't take place in our household. You know what I'm saying? But other things happen, like I tell on every episode, I speak about how I was in a psychiatric hospital for nearly 3 months, how I was on multiple medications, anything from Prozac to Zoloft to Ritalin to Paxil. I was in that hospital for nearly 3 months, and I was in a special education program for 6 years, from 6th through 12th grade. So I thank God that I went through all these things because all those situations brought me to who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how to deal with anxieties when they come, then when these depressions come, because I understand, like, if I made it through that, I can make it through this, whatever it may be, so the blessing of going through those things. And I tell anybody, as bad as some things are, as much as it may have hurt you, you can use that for your good if you choose to.
Right.
Because we have free will.
Exactly.
You can either choose to be depressed and stressed and angry, or you can choose to use that as a tool to help others. And I tell anybody too, the more you help others, the more you help yourself.
Oh yeah, this ministry is helping me out tremendously. Oh my
Because
God.
what you don't want to do is you don't want to isolate yourself. Isolation is death.
It is.
It's a slow death. Because at some point, if you isolate yourself and feel like nobody loves you or cares about you, or nobody's gone through what you've gone through, and you start to really believe that, you're going to start reaching a different side.
You know what,
Matt? That's not of this earth.
I'm trying to deal with that now because I still do that. And I'm trying to work through that. See, I'm still healing in a lot of areas.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
So that was my main thing. I always isolated myself. I would turn off my phone, lock myself in the room. For example, when I turned 50 last November, on my 50th birthday, I contemplated suicide all day. I turned my phone off and locked myself in the room all day on my 50th birthday, where I should have been partying and celebrating life. I was thinking about death. And today, I still tend to, when something happens, my son was in a really bad car accident 2 weeks ago. And I remember the next day, I isolated myself because of course, when you go through a lot, you process things differently. When you've had a lot of trauma and pain and hurt in your life, you tend to process things differently than someone else who may not have had as much pain, trauma, in their life or what have you. So I tend to process things differently in a way where I want to be by myself. I want to, have time to think. But then I realized that's when he creeps in and tries to deter my mind of other things, and I'm seeing that. So I'm working on not doing that, but I used to do that all the time. I'm working on it.
Well, because a lot of times, and I'm glad you spoke about that's real, because we tend to resort back to whatever made us comfortable. You see what I'm saying? So you're used to dealing with trauma by isolating yourself. Mm-hmm. Because that's what you're used to doing.
Right.
So that's what you resort back to. It's no different than someone who comes from poor environments who sold drugs, and that's when things get hard, that's what they're gonna do because that's all they know. Mm-hmm. I would tell anybody, it is. People say life is a marathon, right?
Mhm.
I tend to disagree with that. I believe life is a walk because even at a minor pace, such as a marathon, when you're pacing yourself,
Mhm.
you still just might miss the smallest things. But if you're walking, you may tend to pick up on it.
Okay.
You
I can
know,
see that. I can see that.
um, with when it comes to mental health, and like I was sharing this with you before we went live, as soon as I made up my mind that I was going to start my podcast for mental health,
Mhm.
bam, everything in my life has something to do with the mind.
Mhm.
Because the very thing that you want to do, you know you're called to do, is the very thing the devil's going to attack.
Of course.
Because when you have a calling on your life, he don't want you to hear the voice that's calling you.
Mhm.
That's his main thing, is to shut you down. So I tell anybody, and this is for any athlete, any entertainer, anybody any CEO, anybody who makes up their mind and decides to do something, especially what they was called to do, you have to understand there's going to be adversity.
Mhm.
Every feeling that you can emotionally feel as a human being is going to attack you when you are serious about changing the lives of other people.
Well, just with mental health,
Period.
and just with mental health in itself, that's how the enemy gets people through the mind. He gets you, if he can get you to have anxiety, depression, bouts of suicide, and then to commit the actual act. So to me, anybody dealing in or trying to support or be of help with mental health, to me, you're playing in his backyard, because that's what he's about. He wants to get your mindset. He wants to control your mind, so you're not thinking about the powers that be. God is our savior. God reigns all high. But if we're in a place where we're confined, isolated, thinking nobody loves us, nobody wants us, that's what he wants us. That's how he wants us to feel. Because then he can come on in, and the rest he does his work.
And you know what? To add on to that, I would tell anybody, we all go through depressions, anxieties, fears, doubts.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is not allowing yourself to stay there. And by doing that, one thing I do is sometimes you have to find a reason to smile. Sometimes just looking around, your life may not be where you want it to be, but thank God you're not that person on the corner. Thank God you're not that person who's no longer here. You know what I'm saying? So you have to think about others. Thinking about others will help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you're comparing your life or contrasting. It's
Right.
just more so like, be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And ask for grace. Ask for endurance. Because sometimes a lot of things we try to pray away, it's the main things that God wants us to go through to get us to that next level. That's why I said everything you can't pray away. Because it's meant to happen to you for a reason. You might not understand it while you're going through it, but it's for your good. And those are things that, once again, that's a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I wake up to live, it's a challenge because I want to help people. I want to share my story.
Right.
Because I know this is what I'm called to do, I have to fight those same things. I fight depression. I fight anxiety. I fight those things. The key word is I fight them. I don't lay down.
Right.
You have to fight those things.
You do.
Because if you don't, it will consume you.
Yes, it will.
And it will have you thinking that like nobody cares. Your life is worthless. Even with my podcast, I had to teach myself that, irregardless of how many views you get or don't get, this is the reason why you're doing it. Sometimes we have to resort back to why we started something in order to finish it.
Exactly.
If you're doing it for accolades and praise, you're gonna hit a brick wall.
Right. It's the wrong reason.
Because at some point you might not be, you might be on top today and not on top 10 years from now. So what you gonna do? Jump off a building?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? You have to be doing it for others. Your gift is for others to unwrap.
Right.
God gave you your gift for others to unwrap, to help others. And I personally believe, as long as you keep that mindset, this is your testimony is for somebody else's classroom. Your test is for somebody else's classroom.
You're right.
You'll be okay. The moment you start thinking it's about you and you get caught up in accolades and praise and all, people telling you how great you are because you do this or you do that, regardless of what you do.
Right.
You're going to hit a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be doing it for other people. Humanity and how you help people is the most important tool that you have. So like I said, you're doing it for yourself. At some point, you're going to hit a brick wall. And you also have to understand that everybody goes through human emotions. The depression, everybody gets to that at some point in their life. Anxieties, fear, death, life. These things. I worry about my children. 10 years from now, we're not even 10 years down the road. You know what I'm saying? But I think about them, and I had to, got to catch myself sometimes because don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will worry for itself. And that's hard to do sometimes. We constantly get into a mindset where we're constantly trying to figure things out instead of just taking it one day at a time. And I used to hear that all the time growing up. From the older people would say, take one, and you don't really understand or appreciate why they're saying that until you get older. Mm-hmm. Then you start realizing, you cannot take on everything at one time.
Right.
You can't take on every task and try to have the answers for everything because nobody can do that because nobody's God but God.
Right.
And so when it comes to your mental health, it's imperative that you know when to shut out certain people, when to do things and when not to do things, knowing how to say no.
I call those triggers.
Exactly.
Those are triggers.
You have to know when to say no to that family member that is using you.
Right.
Even if it's your own mother.
Mm-hmm.
Brother, sister, or whomever. You have to know when to walk away from that marriage, I'm going to say it, or that relationship that is detrimental to your spirit. You have to. And we can't lean on, let's make this thing work when the other person doesn't want to make it work.
Right.
Because some people will just marry you so they can have somebody to beat up on.
Oh, wow.
It makes them feel better that now they got somebody in their life. They can just lean all their insecurities and all their depressions and all the things that they never dealt with growing up. It feels good to have somebody there now that I can just lean it on you. And there are so many married people right now that are miserable in relationships because they have the whole, I don't want to get a divorce because that's not what God wants. But God don't want you to be miserable either.
No, he doesn't.
You know what I'm saying? And if you're doing everything you can to keep that marriage together and that your spouse just doesn't want to meet you halfway, you gotta know when to walk away from those type of situations. And then with this whole COVID thing, man, these past almost 2 years has been very difficult. But at the same time, I believe that there's a grace and a greatness that is coming to us.
I hope so.
Because there has to be triumph when there's trials.
Right.
There has to be, it just can't be triumph all the time. You know what I mean? There has to be, it can't be trials all the time. I'm sorry. There has to be some triumph, at some point. And, a lot of people has died from this virus and we don't know where it's going. It can go from bad to worse. It could be something after this, which I believe is a plague, can come something else. So you have to mentally prepare yourself to understand that, life is a walk. You have to walk through it. Don't run. It's not a marathon because it's not a race.
Right.
It's an endurance, if you will. and wrapping up, we had to get you on the show again. We got to get into so many other things, so many more things we need to talk about with you, because it gets much deeper. For those who are listening, will eventually listen, where can they get your book from?
It's on Amazon.
And what's the name of it again?
Look at Me Now, God Kept.
Look at Me Now,
God Kept.
God Kept. Okay. And now, as far as your ministry, what church are you belong to?
Relevant Church in Virginia Beach.
Okay. So those who are church goers or looking for a church home, that's a church you can definitely reach out to. You can also reach out to her, Miss Kenyatta's mental health ministry. If any Black pastor out there is listening, get you a mental health ministry. Okay. Even if you have to get some professionals, that's cool. Because in Black churches, we need that type of ministry. We got everything else, don't we? We got praise team ministry. We got marriage ministries. We got how to be, more, how to get your social media jumping ministry. We got all kinds of, we got everything except that one thing that we really, really need is the mental health ministry. And as Black people, we have to start taking care of that. You cannot pray everything away, because some things that you went through is meant for you to help someone else. And getting help is more important to me than feeling as if, or making yourself feel as if everything is okay because you pray. I believe in prayer 100%. I believe in Jesus. I believe in God 100%. I grew up in the church. But even now, as a near 40-year-old man, I understand that even with prayer, you still have to use the things that God has given you to keep going. You can pray about something and God very well may give you the answer, and the answer may be therapy. And if that's the direction that you're going in, you can't, it's like if you're praying to all my spiritual people who do believe in God, if you're praying and God is saying, go to therapy, don't question it, go to therapy. He's giving you your answer. It's no shame in talking to somebody to save your life.
It's not. I've already talked to my pastors at my church about bringing my ministry under their umbrella. So, and we've talked about it. So, we're going to talk more in depth about it, but I would love to bring, my God Kept, You're Not Alone under Relevance, division. So, just to get that, like you said, to have it a part of the church, and because it's needed. And also to get that covering, that hedge of protection, because like you said, when you started your podcast, you've just been hit left and right.
Definitely. Yes, I have.
Well, they're coming at me too, left and right.
But that's when you know two things. One, you're on the right path, and two, the enemy don't bother nobody he already got.
I know.
And sometimes, what seems unfortunate from a physical standpoint is we have to remember the story, those who believe in God, the story about the Apostle Paul, whatever that affliction he had that God never took from him, but he gave him grace. Sometimes what we think is an affliction is really to keep us focused. Because God knows you better than you know yourself. You may be trying to pray something away, but God knows if he takes it away from you, you're going to go right back to doing, or you're going to be lost.
Right.
So sometimes, I say pray for grace. And endurance, remember, the race is not given to the swift or the strong, but those who endure. Endure is the key. You have to endure, this, what I believe is a walk. Right. And when you're called, many are called, but I'm sorry, when you're chosen, because many are called, but few are chosen. When you're chosen to do great things, you have to understand greater trials will come. To much is given, much is required. And the requirement a lot of times is for you to have to endure things just so others won't have to. Sometimes you're enduring certain attacks gives you the wisdom to help others to learn how to avoid those same things.
Right.
All right. Well, Miss Kenyatta, it was definitely a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure that this interview will reach and touch many people. Mental health is very important to all my Black people. Hey, get your mental health checked. If you need to talk to a doctor, talk to a doctor, talk to someone that you trust, someone that you know cares about you, because you have to understand that you're going to go through things in life, and sometimes it gets like that. It gets very, very hard to keep going sometimes, and it's good that you talk to someone and let out whatever it is that's going on inside of you. You will feel much better. You will also learn that others are probably going through the same thing you're going through. As I was always told growing up, a closed mouth does not get fed. So if you're not saying anything, who can never feed you the truth if you never speak yours? This has been the 10th episode of the No Sky Podcast, where we discuss mental health in the Black community. We want to give it up once again for our guest, Miss Kenyatta Abanathy Lawrence. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. Much respect to you, to your ministry, and everything that you're doing. Much respect to you. Until next time, this has been No Sky Podcast. Check us out next week for another special guest. Until then, your mental health is all the health. Peace. Oh, I got to end this live. Hold on 1 minute. Okay. I believe that was a good show.
Thank you.